The cliff was right there, just inches away, my truck tires barely holding on. I slammed the brakes so hard my legs went numb. The engine died, leaving me in silence. I glanced at the rearview mirror and my heart stopped. Mark was there, standing behind me, grinning, the same dead grin I'd seen 3 years ago. And I knew this was it. No more running, no more getting away. I guess I gotta start from the beginning before all this craziness started. I was just another trucker out on the road doing what I always did, getting the job done no matter what. I'd been on the road for 10 hours straight, feeling like a zombie, just waiting for that caffeine rush to kick in. You'd think I'd learned my lesson after years of trucking, but no, I always pushed it. Then my phone pinged. It was 2 a.m. in the middle of nowhere. Somewhere between nobody cares and nothing good ever happens. I figured it was spam or some midnight spammer. But I looked anyway, because who else was going to keep me awake? And it was from Mark. Mark's been dead for 3 years. My hands went cold just seeing his name pop up, like it pulled me back into a place I didn't want to go. I opened it anyway. Curiosity kills, right? Don't take this road tonight. Turn back. I snorted. Someone was screwing with me. Had to be. Mark's dumb grin was still his profile picture, and it made the hairs on my neck stand up. My mind went back to that night 3 years ago, the night they found him in his car, his face twisted in some final joke that wasn't funny anymore. I wanted to ignore it, keep driving, but I couldn't stop my hands from sweating. My eyes kept darting to the rearview mirror like I expected to see something creeping up behind me. A couple of miles down, I spotted a shadow on the road. Hitchhiker, maybe. Some dude just walking. But when I blinked, he was gone. Just like that. Yeah, okay, Jake, you're losing it, I thought. A minute later, my truck lights flickered. Just a blink, but enough to send a jolt through my chest. Then the GPS started acting weird, rerouting me in circles. It was spooking me, no lie, but I kept on. I was already in too deep to turn back. Then another ping. I didn't want to look, but my gut twisted. Until I did. It was Mark again. You're almost here. It's too late. I'll tell you, I've never been a guy to scare easy, but my palms were soaked, my heart racing like I'd been running a marathon. I tried to shake it off, focus on the road, but bam! Yeah. Something yanked my truck to the left. It was like something grabbed the whole rig and decided I wasn't going straight anymore. I slammed the brakes, tires screeching on the asphalt. I felt my chest tighten, panic squeezing my lungs until I could barely breathe. And then, crash. My head bounced off the wheel, stars flashing in my eyes. I sat there dazed, trying to figure out what just happened. When I finally opened my eyes, there it was, an old rusted car. The same car they found Mark in when he died. I blinked hard, thinking maybe I'd hit my head harder than I thought, but no. Mark was there, sitting inside, dead. The same dumb grin on his face. I tried to move, but I couldn't. My whole body froze. My breath felt stuck, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I forced myself to get out of the truck, but my legs were jelly. I stumbled over to the car, and Mark looked exactly like he did back then. Rotting, eyes hollow, the smile like he knew something I didn't. The smell hit me, thick, sour. My stomach turned. I almost threw up, but I couldn't move. My feet felt glued down, like something wanted me to stay. Then the radio crackled to life. Static, then a voice. His voice. I told you to turn back, Jake. My knees went weak. I jumped so hard I nearly fell over. I sprinted back to my truck, but the door wouldn't budge, locked somehow. I banged on it, cussing under my breath, throat tight with fear. Then I heard it, tires on the pavement, screeching. I looked up and saw them, two dumb jocks in a beat-up Chevy, laughing like idiots, probably drunk. They stumbled out, one of them shouting, "Hey man, what's going on? You crash your Barbie truck or something?" "Get out of here!" I yelled, my voice cracking. "You don't know what's happening here. Just leave!" They just laughed harder. "What, you see a ghost or something?" Before I could yell at them again, they wandered over to Mark's car. One of them looked in the window and jumped back. "Holy shit, there's a dead guy in here." His buddy laughed. "Yeah, right, shut up. You're wasted, man." But the first guy's face went pale. He wasn't laughing anymore. "No, dude, I'm serious. He's dead. Like, really dead." Now they were both freaked. They started backing away, but it was too late. Mark's car engine roared to life on its own. Headlights flickered on, bright as hell, cutting through the dark. Mark's body shifted in the seat. I heard bones cracking as his head turned toward us. His eyes were empty, but somehow they were looking right at me. The jocks screamed and bolted back to their Chevy, but their engine wouldn't start. They kept trying, swearing at each other. Then their radio crackled, Mark's voice again calm and mocking. "You should have listened." Their truck's headlights flared, then died. Total darkness. Everything felt heavy, like the air itself was pressing down on us. I ran to my truck, yanking at the handle, praying it would open. Behind me, I heard the jock's truck doors creak open, and then the sound of something heavy dragging on the ground. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I knew what I'd see, and I couldn't handle it. The air was still, like the world was holding its breath. And then I felt it. Cold. So cold it burned. A hand on my shoulder. Mark's voice, right in my ear. "I warned you." I screamed, yanked the door open, and jumped inside. Hit the gas, and thank God the truck roared to life. I tore down the road, not caring where, just away from there. But the GPS wouldn't stop rerouting. "You're going the wrong way," it kept saying, over and over. I ignored it, my only thought to get away. But no matter how far I drove, it was like the road wouldn't end. Same stretch of highway, repeating, like some messed up loop. Then my phone buzzed again. Another message from Mark. "You can't escape, Jake." I threw the phone out the window, but it didn't matter. His voice came through the speakers, laughing. "I'm always here." Suddenly the road ended. Just like that, a cliff right in front of me. I slammed the brakes, skidding to a stop just in time. And there, in the rearview mirror, was Mark, standing, grinning. And I knew there was no turning back now. Story 2. The dash cam flickered one last time, then everything went quiet. The woman, the jock, everything just vanished. I was alone, staring at my scared face on the screen for a second before it went black. I ripped the camera off the dash, my hands shaking, and threw it onto the passenger seat. My heart was pounding, my head was spinning, and I couldn't figure out what just happened. But I knew, even as I opened the door and stumbled out into the cold desert night, that whatever happened back there, whatever that camera showed me, I'd never be free of it. It all started because I was broke. Really broke. The kind of broke that makes you look at those sketchy ads online, the ones with flashing lights and huge discounts, and think, yeah, maybe that's my best option. I'm a trucker. I pulled double shifts across desert highways, and I figured getting a dash cam was smart. You know, safety, maybe some proof for insurance. I wasn't swimming in money, so I bought the thing off one of those sites. It looked legit enough. It was cheap, and I was desperate. I installed it myself. It wasn't hard, and soon enough, there it was, blinking on my dashboard, watching the road. That night was long, even for me. The kind of long that makes your brain feel numb. Mile after mile of flat desert. Just the road and some junk on the radio. The kind of songs I didn't even like, but still found myself humming after a while. I was sipping on cold coffee, the cheap kind that tastes awful, and scrolling through Facebook with my other hand because, well, what else could I do? My phone kept glitching, probably the bad signal out there, but I didn't think much of it. Then the dash cam flickered, just for a second. I thought it was the connection, maybe I hit a bump or something. But it kept happening. Every few minutes, just a flicker like it couldn't decide if it wanted to work or not. I told myself it didn't matter, that I'd fix it later. But then I saw her, standing on the side of the road. A woman, middle of nowhere, no car, nothing. I thought she was a hitchhiker, but when I passed her, she was gone. Just gone. I looked at the dash cam and there she was, caught on the footage, staring right into the lens. My stomach dropped. My head was spinning, but I kept driving. Didn't stop. Told myself I was just tired, maybe seeing things. But I couldn't shake it. I glanced back at the footage, and there she was, coming toward me on the screen. But I looked out the window, nothing, just the empty road behind me. Then the truck lurched. My heart jumped into my throat. It felt like I'd hit something, but the road was clear. I looked at the dash cam, and there she was again, climbing into the cab. Only on the screen. Not outside, not anywhere I could see, just in the footage. My hands were glued to the wheel. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. The truck swerved, heading for the ditch, and I knew I was about to crash. The impact felt like a brick wall. The seatbelt cut into me, and I felt my leg twist, pain shooting through it. My head slammed into the wheel and everything spun. I was stuck, bleeding, my body pinned. I looked at the dash cam, and there she was again, outside now, staring at me. Just standing there, calm as ever, like she knew what was happening, like she planned it. And that's when it hit me. The cam had been lying to me the whole time, showing me things that weren't real. I tried to move, to grab the cam, to rip it off, but my body wouldn't listen. My legs were dead weight and my arms wouldn't move. My head felt like it was splitting open. I shouted for help, but my voice barely made a sound. The desert was silent, empty, and she just stood there, staring. I lost track of time, minutes, hours. I couldn't tell. The dash cam kept flickering, showing me things that didn't make sense. The woman, the truck, the road. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Everything felt wrong. I focused on the details, the cheap plastic of the cam, the dirt on the windshield, the weight of my phone in my hand, but none of it felt real. Nothing did. Then the cam beeped, a low, creepy sound that cut through the silence. I looked, and she was moving again, reaching for the door handle. My heart raced, my hands shaking. The truck stayed quiet, but the dash cam showed her climbing in, sitting in the passenger seat, staring at me. And that's when the dumb jock showed up. Some guy I knew from back when I was a kid, grinning like an idiot in the back seat, slapping the headrest. "What's up, man? Can't believe you're still driving this old junker." He laughed like it was all some kind of joke. But he wasn't real, just another twisted thing the cam decided to show me. Another trick. I tried to snap myself out of it, told myself over and over, this isn't real, this isn't happening. But the jock laughed harder, and the woman just stared, quiet and still. The truck creaked, like something heavy was pressing down on it, but I couldn't see anything. The cam flickered, went dark for a second, and I thought maybe, just maybe it was over. But it wasn't. The cam flickered back on, and she was in the driver's seat, her face pale, eyes empty, reaching for the gear shift. I shouted, but it was useless. The engine roared to life, and the truck started moving. I wasn't in control anymore. The road stretched out ahead, the desert swallowing us, and I couldn't do anything but watch. The dumb jock laughed, leaning forward, his face inches from mine. "Best ride ever, right?" He slapped the seat, and I wanted to punch him, to tell him to shut up, but I couldn't move. The woman drove, and I felt it. Something bad was coming, something I couldn't stop. Suddenly, the cam flickered again. The jock was gone, just me and her. The truck picked up speed, faster and faster, and I knew we were about to crash. I tried to grab the wheel, but my hands wouldn't work. The engine screamed, and the dash cam showed the truck lifting off the ground, flying above the desert. My heart pounded, my mind raced. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But the cam showed it. Us flying. The desert below. I screamed, and the woman ignored me. Then we were back on the road, slamming down hard, the impact jolting through me. The dash cam flickered, and there I was, staring back at myself. My own face, twisted in fear, smirking like the woman had. The truck stopped. Everything went quiet. The woman was gone. The jock was gone. The cam was dead. I ripped it off the dash, my hands shaking, and threw it onto the seat. I opened the door, pulling myself out, my legs barely holding me up. I stumbled onto the road, breathing in the cold desert air, whispering to myself, never again. But I knew, deep down, I'd never be free of it. Story 3. Danny knew buying secondhand electronics could be risky, but he didn't expect it to open a door to something far worse. He'd always prided himself on sniffing out a deal, flipping through sketchy online marketplaces like some people read the morning paper. It was like a game. How low could he go and still come out on top? But this time, the score was all wrong. It started with a refurbished GPS. Looked good, worked good, priced at practically nothing. A no-name seller called Rick's Deals 49 had sold it to him with a picture of a guy giving a thumbs up, like he was a friend just lending a hand. That was the first mistake, but Danny didn't know it then. Driving that night, the rain came down hard. The kind that makes you squint even with the wipers on high speed, and everything outside just turns to one big blur. He'd been driving long enough to know storms, but this one felt different. Too thick, too heavy. It was like driving underwater. And right then, that GPS decided to get cute. Turn right in 500 feet. Danny looked out. There wasn't a road there, just trees, lots of them, like soldiers lined up shoulder to shoulder. He laughed. Stupid thing must have glitched. Probably got waterlogged. He ignored it, kept on the highway. Recalculating. That damn voice, too calm. He hated how calm it was. It made his gut feel tight. He could hear it over the roar of the rain. Turn right into the woods. He muttered to himself, shaking his head. Yeah, sure, let me just drive into some trees, see how that goes. But after a while, the road in front of him disappeared behind the sheets of rain, and he started feeling that familiar itch, the curiosity that always got him into trouble. He'd just check it out, just to see. He was stuck on the night shift, hours to kill. What could it hurt? The GPS kept repeating itself like it knew something he didn't. When he saw an opening between the trees, Danny shrugged and took the turn. The road beneath the truck changed instantly. From the smooth hum of asphalt to the rumble of gravel and mud. He gripped the wheel tighter. "Stop here and wait," said the voice. It was still calm, still unfazed by the fact it had just directed him off the map entirely. He rolled to a stop, let the truck idle for a second, trying to make sense of things. He reached for his phone. No signal. Of course. And then the engine cut, just like that. 1 second it was on, the next everything was dead. No lights, no sound, nothing but rain, pounding on the roof and the emptiness around him. He cursed, hit the ignition again and again, until his knuckles went white. Nothing. He felt that gnawing doubt in his chest grow into something meaner. "Stupid piece of junk!" he hissed, kicking at the base of the dashboard. The air felt thick, like something was pressing down on him. He looked out the windshield, and that's when he saw them. Shadows moving between the trees, slipping closer, slow and careful. They were coming from all directions, like they knew exactly where to find him. He felt his heart jump into his throat. He tried to tell himself it was just the storm playing tricks on his eyes, but he knew. Somehow, he knew. Danny fumbled for the door, kicking it open, stumbling out into the rain. He yelled into the dark, "Hey! Who's there?" His voice sounded small, swallowed up by the storm. The figures kept moving, drawing closer. They weren't in any hurry. He could feel them. The way you feel eyes on you even when you're not looking. He turned back to the truck, trying the door again, but it was locked now. He hadn't locked it. He banged on the window, uselessly. His breath came fast and sharp. He backed away from the truck looking for a way out, any way out. The GPS. It was still on. The screen glowed faintly inside the cab, showing a red dot where he was, surrounded by black. No roads, no towns, nothing. Just him and that stupid dot and those shadows slipping out of the woods. He knew then. He'd been played. The GPS wasn't broken. It had brought him here on purpose. Someone had tampered with it, twisted it into a trap, and like an idiot, he'd walked right into it. The figures were closer now, their shapes taking form. Humans, but not quite. Too long, too thin, like they'd been stretched. He felt his stomach drop. Danny'd always thought he was smarter than this. Thought he could spot a bad deal from a mile away. But here he was. out in the rain with no truck, no phone, no way out. He'd thought he was buying a bargain. Instead, he'd bought his way into something much worse. The shadows were almost on him now, and Danny finally ran. But it didn't matter. There was nowhere to go. They'd brought him here, and they were going to keep him here. He was just another sucker who thought he could beat the system, and now he'd pay the price. And as he ran, Danny couldn't help but laugh. A sharp, bitter sound that got lost in the rain. He'd always thought buying secondhand was a good idea. Turns out, sometimes you really do get what you pay for. Story 4. Tyler thought winning that midnight auction for truck parts was a steal. He didn't know he'd be paying with more than just money. It started with the auction. It was around 11:45 p.m., one of those nights where sleep just wasn't an option, and you're just scrolling online to kill time. Tyler's always had a thing for deals, not just any deals. The kind that makes you feel like you're getting away with something. That's how he ended up bidding on that truck part. The rare one he knew was worth a lot more than what people were offering. Nobody was even going for it. Tyler thought everyone else was just too scared of midnight auctions and scammers. But him? He didn't care. He figured he'd either get a steal or end up wasting a few bucks. So he bid, won, and laughed at how easy it was. 2 days later, a box showed up at his doorstep. No logo, no return address, just brown cardboard with some black tape holding it together. He'd seen sketchier deliveries. So whatever, he wasn't going to back out now. Tyler ripped it open, and there it was, the part. Looked legit enough. A hunk of metal with some screws, exactly what he expected, except for these weird scratches along the side. Maybe some guy had tried to pry it open or something, but who cared? It was his now. Tyler got his toolbox, popped the hood of his truck, and spent the next hour installing the thing. There wasn't anything fancy about it. Plug in some wires, bolt it down, and call it a day. He didn't bother with instructions. He knew his truck inside and out. Probably better than he knew himself at this point. The truck was his life, always had been. The only constant since he dropped out of high school, left his mom's house, and decided he'd make a living on the road. The next night, he was hauling a load from Phoenix to Flagstaff. Easy route, straight shot, nothing but empty roads and stars. He was cruising, enjoying the quiet, until the truck started making this weird noise. It wasn't loud, just a soft rhythmic clicking, like something tapping against metal. He ignored it at first. Trucks made noises all the time, especially old ones like his. But then, the dashboard lights flickered. First the oil light, then the battery. Then the whole thing just went dark and came back again. Tyler frowned. This was new. He tapped the dashboard like that'd fix it, but the lights flickered again, faster this time. The clicking noise got louder, more like a knocking now, and the steering wheel jerked to the right. Tyler tried to pull it back, but it was like fighting with someone else's hands. The truck veered off the road, bouncing over gravel and dirt until it stopped, headlights pointing at something. It wasn't supposed to be there. A warehouse. Run down, windows busted out, metal siding rusted and curling at the edges. Tyler could have sworn there wasn't supposed to be anything out here, just desert and highway. He sat there, staring at it, heart pounding in his chest. The clicking had stopped, but now there was this pressure, this feeling like he shouldn't be here, like he'd made a mistake. He got out of the truck. Gravel crunched under his boots as he walked to the front, popped the hood again. He figured maybe he'd just disconnect the new part, see if that fixed things. But when he looked, the part was different. The scratches weren't scratches. They were symbols. Weird, almost like letters, but nothing he recognized. They looked deeper now, like they'd been carved in, not just scratched. Tyler's stomach turned. He reached out, touched one of the symbols, and it felt hot, like it burned his skin. He yanked his hand back, cursing. The truck engine roared to life. Tyler jumped, almost hitting his head on the hood. He hadn't even touched the ignition. He ran to the driver's side, tried to turn it off, but the key wouldn't budge. The wheel spun on its own, and the truck started rolling forward, straight toward the warehouse. Panic hit him hard. Tyler stumbled back, falling on his ass in the dirt as the truck drove itself, headlights cutting through the dark, engine growling like some kind of beast. He watched, helpless, as it rolled right up to the warehouse doors, which creaked open like they'd been waiting for him. Tyler scrambled to his feet, heart pounding. He didn't know what the hell was happening, but he knew one thing. He'd been played. The auction. The part. It was all a setup. He felt like an idiot for trusting it, for thinking he'd found some great deal. Now his truck, his life, was being taken from him, and he didn't even know why. He took a step forward, then stopped. The warehouse loomed in front of him, dark and hollow, like a mouth ready to swallow him whole. He could hear the truck inside, the engine still running, echoing off the metal walls. Tyler swallowed, fear clawing at his throat. He could go in, try to get his truck back. Or he could turn around, leave it, and never look back. But he couldn't do it. He couldn't just walk away. That truck was his life. Without it, he was nothing. Just some washed-up guy with nothing to his name. He took a deep breath, clenched his fists, and walked toward the open doors. The second he stepped inside, the doors slammed shut behind him. Tyler spun around, but it was too late. He was in, and there was no getting out. The truck's headlights flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls, and Tyler felt it. That pressure again. That feeling that he'd walked straight into something he didn't understand. He turned back to the truck, and that's when he saw it. Something moving in the shadows. Something that shouldn't be there. He knew, deep down, that he'd been lured here. The auction, the part, it was all a trap. And now he was stuck, with nothing but his truck and whatever was hiding in the dark waiting for him. Tyler thought he was getting a steal, but in the end, he was the one who'd been stolen.